Hello and welcome to Not So Happy Hour. My name is Victoria.
I'm Michelle.
And I'm Crystal. Today we will be talking about the real life effects of alcohol on your health, especially how drinking can lead to liver cancer.
Okay, wait, liver cancer? That escalated really fast. Is it really wrong to unwind with a couple of drinks?
Well, actually, yeah, it is. And a lot of people think like that, and that's exactly how damage creeps in without us advertising. And alcohol doesn't just vanish once you finish the party, and it goes straight to your liver instead, and it can leave a mess.
Yeah. So let's slow it down and break it down. So your liver isn't just some background organ, it's also your body's detox hub. And essentially everything that you eat and drink, especially alcohol, will go there first. And the liver's job is essentially to protect the rest of your body.
So it's like a filter. That sounds like something like it's supposed to do. What's the problem then?
The issue isn't just drinking, it's also how much and how often. So usually, drinking once in a while in small amounts isn't that harmful. However, what people don't realize is that there is such a term called moderate drinking. And essentially, moderate drinking is up to 1 glass per day for women and 2 glasses for men.
Well, truly, the problem is overuse, and as you might know, the liver acts like a sponge, and if you use over time, if you keep pouring and pouring, over time it will no longer be able to handle it anymore, and that's why your liver will get swollen, and they will develop inflammation, and they can develop into scarring called fibrosis, and that just doesn't go away, and even if it goes on, it can develop into cirrhosis, and yeah. That's where the liver becomes hard and they cannot function properly, and eventually, yeah, it can develop into cancer as well.
All right. So I have a little statistic here for you. So Indonesians only drink around 0.33 liters per year. That doesn't sound so bad. That's a little amount. That's less than a liter.
That's true, but nowadays youngsters are on hype about binge drinking, and this is where the problem lies, and that's why we should highlight about this problem more.
Okay, so the problem with binge drinking, or even just slightly overdoing it every weekend, can have serious effects on your liver. Especially because you might think that, well, I'm not an alcoholic, but the chronic low level drinking can actually add up.
Yeah. And in fact, the World Health Organization itself says there's no amount of safe drinking for the liver. And that doesn't mean that one drink will hurt you, but it means that just the risk starts as it accumulates over time.
Okay, so is there any sort of guideline as what's too much?
Yeah, actually, there are many health authorities that suggest that staying under 2 standard drinks per day for men and 1 for women, and no more. But again, this should be drinks like in moderately, should not be every day.
And here's what actually happens when you drink alcohol. So it goes from your stomach to the bloodstream and then into the liver.
All right, then what? The liver just handles it?
Well, the liver does have specialized enzymes to degrade this alcohol. So the first enzyme is actually called alcohol dehydrogenase. So it converts alcohol into a chemical called acetaldehyde. However, acetaldehyde is actually even more toxic than alcohol.
And here's the kicker. Many Asians, including lots of Indonesians, they don't have the second enzyme. So they have to degrade alcohol acetaldehyde very slow. And this is why that some people turn red, they feel dizzy while drinking, and they're getting the infamous name of the Asian flush, if you know. And it's basically your body saying that, help, I cannot clean all this up.
So wait, so if I get the Asian flush, does that mean I'm in danger?
Right, so remember that acetaldehyde that we talked about earlier? The toxic stuff that your liver makes when it's breaking down alcohol? So it's actually not working alone. There's also ROS, which is reactive oxygen species.
So wait, isn't oxygen supposed to be good, like for the plants, for breathing?
Well, totally, yes, if oxygen works the way it's supposed to be. However, when ROS works, it's just like the wild cousin of oxygen. And when they become accumulated in the body, they can cause liver cells to be damaged and they can cause problems.
Exactly. ROS can also mess with things like protein, fat, or even DNA. So it's like letting wild sparks fly near important wires. Eventually, something's going to short circuit.
Oh, all right. So I'm guessing this short circuit is not something my liver can just fix overnight.
Nope. So, well, this kind of damage happens over time, and especially when paired with acetaldehyde, it can lead to mutations, further mutations, and that's one of the way these cancer cells develop.
Okay, so first it's toxic leftovers, then rogue oxygen, now mutated DNA. My poor liver is going through a whole sci-fi horror movie.
Yeah, pretty much. But unfortunately, it's not fiction. But don't worry, liver damage doesn't just accumulate overnight. It's usually through a step by step process. So let's break it down.
Okay, so the first stage is actually the fatty liver stage, and at this stage, your liver starts to accumulate extra fat. And usually, at this stage, there's no symptoms at all, but it is a sign that your liver is under pressure.
And stage two is inflammation, which is also known as the alcoholic hepatitis. So here, your liver gets irritated and swollen. And usually you can start to feel some kind of symptoms like nausea or even like a pain in your right side of your stomach.
And the next stage is called fibrosis. So at this stage, the liver tries to heal itself. However, it doesn't heal properly, and instead it lies down scar tissue instead. And this scar tissue cannot function properly as liver cells do.
Yeah, and finally, the last stage is also known as cirrhosis. So this is where your liver is stiff, full of scars, and is barely working at this point. And this is where things start to get dangerous because cirrhosis can actually lead to liver failure and finally liver cancer.
All right, so all that buildup, fat, inflammation, scarring, it's like my liver slowly getting buried under all of this damage and it just gives out.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And coupled with ROS and acetaldehyde that are damaging your liver cells DNA.
Yeah, but the good news is that the liver can recover, especially in the earlier stages. However, once it reaches the cirrhosis stage, it's really hard to start treatment.
Wow, I came in just thinking it's fine for just a few drinks, but now I feel like I owe my liver like a huge apology. Okay, so now I'm curious. How does all of this damage actually becomes liver cancer? So what's the jump between cirrhosis into something serious as cancer?
That's a great question. So remember the mutations that we mentioned earlier before? So when the liver cells get damaged over and over again, actually the liver itself, they try to repair. But over time, the DNA get damaged and damaged. The repair system no longer be able to keep up with its work, and hence it gets overwhelmed and, cancer.
Especially when these mutations affect genes that control cell growth. So, like turning off a gene that's supposed to stop cell division, or turning on a gene that makes your cells multiply uncontrollably. So, these are when you start to get cancer.
So it's like the liver cells forget their roles and starts multiplying whatsoever.
Exactly. They go rogue, and normally your body will try to remove the bad cells or damaged cells. But however, these cells can bypass the safety checks and they develop into a tumor.
Yeah, so that's actually how hepatocellular carcinomas, or HCC, starts, which is the most common type of liver cancer. So this usually appears on top of cirrhosis. So it means that the people who already have cirrhosis from alcohol will be at a much higher risk for this HCC.
This is so wild. It's like your liver is just trying to do its job, but alcohol keeps setting it up to fail. And one day it can't keep it under control.
Yeah, that's the danger of chronic alcohol abuse because at the moment you don't feel that this much of a big deal, but over time, yeah, it will get to you.
Yeah, and by the time the cancer shows up, there might not be that many clear signs for you to notice that it's cancer. So this raises the next big question, which is how do you actually know if you already have some kind of liver damage or even cancer starting?
So if liver cancer doesn't show their symptoms early on, how do people even catch it in time?
Well, that's the scary part. So in early stages, there's no symptoms at all. There's no pain and no nothing. You just feel tired and no appetite. And usually these are things that people really brush off and they don't really care. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why diagnosis actually relies heavily on screening, especially for people who already have some kind of liver disease or even cirrhosis. So these people are classified as high risk, and if they are high risk, doctors will recommend regular monitoring such as blood tests and imaging.
Oh wow. So what we're talking about, like actually drawing blood?
Yeah, one common blood test is alpha fetoprotein or AFP, and it is a protein that sometimes is higher in people with liver cancer. However, it's not always the case. Sometimes people with liver cancer may not express as much AFP compared to normal.
Okay, so that's why imaging is also super important. So things like ultrasound, CT scans, as well as MRIs can help doctors see if there's some kind of abnormal growth in the liver.
So if someone has cirrhosis, they have to get this all test checked regularly.
Ideally, yes. So people with cirrhosis, they tend to have a 6 month checkup, and so it's easier for the doctor to catch it on early.
Because once symptoms do appear, like weight loss or belly pain, and even yellowing in the skin or the eyes, it usually means that the cancer is already at an advanced stage.
Oh wow, so the liver is so quiet, but not in a good way. By the time it speaks up, it's heard we're already in trouble.
Exactly. That's why awareness and routine checkups are very important, especially for people who drink heavily or have liver conditions before.
Yeah, the sooner it's found, the better the chances for treatment. So let's start talking about the treatment.
Alright, so let's say someone did get diagnosed with liver cancer. What happens then? Is it treatable?
Well, it can be, especially if it is caught early, because the type of treatment really depends on the cancer stage itself. So we need to know how big is the cancer itself and how healthy your other liver tissue is.
Yeah, for small tumors, one of the best treatment strategies is actually surgery. So you can do a partial removal of the liver or even do an entire organ transplant.
Whoa, a whole transplant? That sounds really intense.
Well, it is, but it can be life saving because the liver is actually the only organ that can regrow. So, in some cases, just removing part of the tumor itself, it can be replaced again by the other healthy liver cells.
Yeah, but if the cancer is more advanced, usually surgery is not possible. So there are non-surgical options. One of them is called chemoembolization. So this is where chemotherapy drugs are directly sent into the liver's blood supply, where the chemotherapy can target cells that are actively multiplying.
Oh wow, that's really cool because that's mean it would be something like targeted attacks, right?
Well, pretty much, there are also targeted therapies and immunotherapies as well, which are the medicines that block specific signaling, so the cells cannot receive signals that help them to grow and develop more into serious cases.
Oh, okay. So we'll talk about. So we've talked about damage, diagnosis, traditional treatment, and even newer things like immunotherapy. But what's next? Is there anything out there that can actually fix the liver, not just slow it down?
Great questions. So actually, the research is shifting from managing liver diseases into start to reverse them. So they want to regrow or regenerate the livers that have been damaged.
Yeah, so these are usually called stem cell therapy. So scientists are currently looking into these specialized cells called mesenchymal stem cells or even induced pluripotent stem cells. So stem cells are essentially cells that are at their early stages of maturation. So they have the potential to turn into any type of mature cell. And of course, this includes liver cells, which are called hepatocytes, which means that these stem cells can actually help replace the already damaged liver cells and help regenerate new tissue.
Okay, that sounds really promising. But are there any hurdles over these things?
Absolutely. One big question is that what challenges still remain in making stem cells viable for liver cancer patients? Because, and one thing, liver stem cells, we are able to control their growth itself. So we cannot control whether they can trigger immune response, unwanted immune response, or even trigger them to be another type of cells that we obviously don't want. And also delivering them effectively into the liver itself is very tricky, and getting them to survive, function, and yeah, do their function properly is still a big question.
Yeah, and there's also currently gene editing, like using tools called CRISPR-Cas9. So these are currently being tested to actually correct the mutations itself at a genetic level. So this could actually potentially reverse cancer at the genetic level.
Wait, so we can edit the genes that cause liver cancer?
Yeah, that's the idea. So the next question is which mutation is promising for CRISPR targets? Well, scientists are especially looking forward towards genes like p53, TERT, and CTNND1. And these are often mutated in liver cancer, and drive things like uncontrolled cell proliferation and resistance to cell death.
And it's not just theory. Some research is already underway. So some people are using lipid nanoparticles. They're kind of like tiny fat bubbles that can deliver these gene editing tools directly to the liver cells.
So what's exciting about this is that these aren't just for symptom relief. They are trying to rebuild the liver function, restore healthy cells, and stop cancer cells from growing.
So it's not just patching up the holes that the damage built, but it's more building the whole, rebuilding the mechanism.
Yeah, exactly. And here's another thought. How can regenerative strategies be combined with immunotherapy or even targeted drugs? So the answer is personalized medicine. So imagine combining these stem cells with that will repair the liver with immune drugs that will keep the new tumors from growing, or even editing genes to reduce scarring as well as stopping cancer mutations.
So, well, in essence, we're moving from damage control to actually restoring the cells. And it's still early, but the future of liver cancer treatment is looking more regenerative and more tailored to each patient. So, yeah, than ever before.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Even with all these treatments, liver cancer is still really hard to beat. So what's most important is that you have to start prevention.
So we're back to square one. Taking care of your liver before things getting out of hand, right?
Exactly. Reducing alcohol intake and also eating healthy, they all help protect your liver in the future.
Yeah, so it's not about never having fun or always being perfect, but it's just knowing the risks. And at the end of the day, you have to make sure that your choices aren't going to be a big regret in the future.
Well, this was a huge wake up call for me. But now that we've gone through all of this, what about the studies that small amounts of alcohol might be good for you? Like how fermented foods like kimchi or kombucha has little trace of amounts but still have good impact for you.
Well, great question. Some studies do suggest that low to moderate intake of alcohol, especially red wine or other stuff, may have cardiovascular or metabolic benefits. But the key, though, is moderation. Back again to moderation, just like drinking one a day or less.
And it also depends on what is moderate for each person. So, what's moderate for one person may actually be harmful to someone else. So, especially this can be affected by things like family history of cancer or people who simply just metabolize alcohol differently.
As for fermented foods, yes, sure, they may contain some alcohol, but it's usually very low and they don't pose the same risk as drinking. So it still shows alcohol is more than just a party thing, it's part of a food, culture, medicine, and that's why the context matters.
All right, so it's not about demonizing alcohol, but understanding when it helps, when it harms, and how it works on your body, right?
Exactly. So, in the end, it's about making informed choices. So, knowing the risk gives you the power to drink or even not, and of course, with intention.
And hopefully to protect your liver before the damage gets too far.
All right, I think that's it for today's enough hard topic. So thanks for joining Not So Happy Hour. Maybe it's time to switch that next drink with some H2O.
More. Protect your liver before they degrade. Yeah.
May
Degrade. Asal dan maaf.
Gak apa-apa.
Tuh guys, no binge drinking.
Ini lagi rekam loh.
Acol.
Oh, mom.
known as chronic alcoholic hepatitis.